Okay. I'm facing the sunlight. I'm going to turn around. I'm in my room. Okay, that's better.
All right, Anita, question 1. How would you describe your approach to leadership?
I would say that I'm pretty humble, like in being a leader, but you also have to, I'm also willing to take risks, and being a good listener. It's taken a few years to develop that skill. It's something that I'm going to be. It's a lifelong thing, but in leadership, that's definitely a skill you have to have.
Good.
But you have to be willing to be bold as well.
All right, question 2. What influenced that approach to your leadership?
I've been around lots of leaders. As I was growing up, my dad, for one, was a leader at the Tahltan a couple of times in a couple of different roles. But also his friends were leaders as well. Participating in meetings before I was a leader, I was able to learn about, the subjects that we talk about, and, being trained. I didn't know I was being trained, but I was being trained. And then also watching other leaders, and, I saw one of our greatest leaders. He was really, really powerful, but he was really, really quiet. And he recently passed away, and he was a leader for 30 years. And he barely talked. And I used to think to myself, why is he not talking? And then I caught on. At the end of the meeting, he would always talk, and he would share his views, and they were always, always bang on. And so, there's something to be said about not always talking all the time and really listening to people.
The next question. How do you define exemplary leadership? Exemplary meaning the best of its kind.
I think the best leaders are the ones that, for one, you have to be healthy. You have to be healthy. You have to take care of yourself. And, the strongest leaders I've seen are people who live healthy lifestyles. And that leader I was talking about, he never drank, he never did drugs. He was, he in his leadership, he took care of himself. He also, I think as a leader in general, you have to be willing to learn, always willing to learn, because the minute you think that you know everything, then you're not really being a leader, because a leader is a messenger. And you have to be willing to listen to all of people's opinions, and, and in First Nations leadership, it's based on consensus. And so it takes a special kind of skill to really take all of those opinions and interests and be able to articulate all of those. And that's what leadership is about, because you're articulating interests of people. And if you're able to have that skill, and people are agreeing with you, really they're agreeing with themselves, because that's what you're doing.
Connie and Ryan, you can follow up with questions as she's going if you feel like you want more in depth on each question, just to get more out of it for our information, I guess. What contributes to exemplary leadership? The best of its kind leadership. What contributes to it?
For me, I have a group of people that that I trust, and I surround myself with people who have skills that I don't have. We have a team of advisors who have experience experience in different fields, and you're always, willing to learn, and also really, taking the time to spend time with people so you can learn. I can't stress that enough, is being willing to learn and to, you know, being able to articulate those issues and not pretending like you know, because people will know if you're not genuine. I mean, I always want to ensure that, you know, in being a leader, I want to make sure that I'm not being fake. You have to be real. You have to be genuine, because people will. I mean, people can they can see right through you if you're not.
Okay.
And actually, one more thing I'll add is you have to be passionate about what you do, like loving what you do. The minute you stop loving whatever it is you're doing as a leader, it could be working at an organization or working for, people, or leading in a regular government. I think the minute you stop loving that, then it's just time to throw in the hat.
Awesome. What approaches to leadership have you found ineffective, and why?
Anger. As soon as I start getting angry and trying to talk over people and acting as if my opinion is more important than theirs, then I'm actually not really being a leader. I'm just standing I'm acting. That's not leadership. It's not. As a leader, you're a messenger. You have to be willing to take the interest of people and articulate them and move that message forward. I mean, that's the whole point of being a leader, is having someone up front who's taking your interest, and people believe that that person is doing that. But if that person in front is not doing that, then you're not really leading people. You're just leading yourself.
All right. And the position you're in, relating to the same question, is when we studied leadership, there was two types of leaders. There was the task-oriented leader or the relationship-oriented leader, and sometimes it could mix. Sometimes you could be one or in the middle. And in the area you're in for leadership, what's most effective in your opinion? Relationship-oriented or task-oriented? Meaning, get this done, or you coerce them in a nice way to get things done.
It's relationship-oriented. With our people, it's really relationship-oriented. But there's some you have to do tasks as well, but it's not so much the task. You have to be able to develop relationships with people and be able to communicate. And that's one of the things that in my position has evolved over the last 6 years, is developing those relationships and articulating what our people want to move forward. But the only way I could have done that is by developing those relationships. If I just assume these are the things that need to get done and just keep going, because it's moving. It's moving. Those interests move, and you have to be willing to be there to hear what they want.
All right. Our next question, Illicit, it says, how do you determine which approach to leadership to use in a specific situation?
If I'm sitting down with a group of elders, I can't worry about tasks. One example, I just, and it sometimes you can't just, and when it comes to people, sometimes you can't come and sit down and have your agenda. I mean, people will realize that too. I mean, I just have to be willing to sit down and visit. And you know what? Usually, like in this example with elders, they'll tell you what they want. Like a lot of times, but it takes sitting down, and it takes a while. And they also have to have that trust. I mean, because this is the same group. I mean, our elders have been through a lot, and and the trust has been broken with many different people. So seeing somebody in authority, if you come in and you're just trying to get something out of them, they're not going to appreciate that at all. So you have to develop that relationship. But even with government, wherever you're, even in industry, I mean, if I come in and I'm just angry and I'm talking to industry, then I can't develop that relationship to move forward, move our interests forward. So you really have to develop relationships, and it takes time to do that. And that's why, sometimes I'll see people who are young or even people who are older and they've never had experience in leadership, which is developing relationships like we're talking about, and they assume they're going to go for the top role. Well, if you don't have all of that behind you with those, having those connections, having that networking, having those relationships, it's pretty hard to push forward the people's interest.
That being said, what is the most rewarding thing about being a leader?
The most rewarding thing is when I hear our people's interests, and it could have been years ago, like we want to protect this area or we want to see healing done, when you actually start to see those goals being fulfilled and, our people, being happy about it, that's when I feel like I've done a good job.
That's great. 8. What challenges have they faced as a leader, and how did they respond?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning, like I said, there was some history to this position, and our people didn't trust the leader of the Tahltan. Like, they just didn't. And there was a lot of stereotypes and assumptions that went with this role, and it took years. So it was really hard for me. Like, sometimes people were really, really angry, and they were saying, well, TCC, that they did this and you did this, and I had to really work really hard to say that was, to really teach people and inform them of the facts. And it took many years to inform our people, educate them, and then they were able. Now there's this relationship made where our people are going, yeah, TCC is okay. I understand what they do. So I always have to go back and inform our people about what's going on.
So you have to build trust with your followers. Just a note.
Yeah, you really do have to build trust, and I mean, especially like I was in an environment where there was no trust, and there was a lot of toxicity and a lot of assumptions being made on me, and a lot of history there, and I had to really break through all of that, and it was really challenging, and sometimes it was really, really hard.
And to be more in depth, specifically, what are some things you think that is just general about First Nations leadership that is difficult?
Well, one of the things is, the history for sure. I mean, we have a history of pain. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, like with colonization and then, the residential schools, 60 scoop, when you put all of these things together and you have our people right now, you can see that there's generational impacts. And if you don't understand that, you will come into a community and sometimes you'll think you're dealing with super angry people. And a lot of times you have to be able to separate that and say, I recognize that there's pain here. I recognize there's a history here, and I affirm that. And I'm not going to take it personal. I'm going to try to work in this environment and do the best that I can to work with our people. And that's the difference. And another thing that separates First Nations politics than regular government is my constituents or my family, my cousin, my auntie, my uncle, my grandparents, my sisters, my brothers. Like, I could be on the same board. So, sometimes they say, don't take it personal. Well, yeah, sometimes I do take it personal when it's my relatives sitting across the table telling me that they don't like what I'm doing.
All right, we'll move on to number 9. What transitions / changes have you experienced as a leader over the years? And you've led in this role for 6 years now, I think.
I think when I first came in, I was really arrogant because I was younger and I was inexperienced. So I thought my way was the best way, and that if you couldn't understand how smart I was and what I was bringing to the table, then you really didn't understand what a good leader I was. Well, that's completely changed now. Is that I recognize that I'm a messenger. Is the only way I can describe it. In that, in order to do the best job, I have to listen, and that sometimes my ideas aren't always the best ideas. And that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to be here for the people. And it took a lot of time to recognize that that's where I'm supposed to be going. And also, I've evolved in my own healing, whereas before I was a lot angrier. I had my own history, and I've dealt with those over the last few years, and I was able to really open up and be able to be more open.
Number 10. Number 10. What significant message or learning can you pass on to the next generation of leaders, meaning everyone you see here, or specifically me, because it's almost in the same arena, right?
Again, I'd say be willing to listen, but sometimes you'd have to be willing to take risks, because sometimes there'll be a group over here who wants something, and then another group will want something, and a lot of times you could have a relationship with the group that's smaller, but if the majority wants something, you have to do it, and you have to take that risk. And sometimes what the majority may want may not be the best way to go, and you have to figure out ways to really work with people to move those interests forward. And that's really hard, and also balancing all the interests. So it is a balancing act at all times, balancing all these different interests and trying to move them forward. But I think if I was passing on a message, I'd just tell people to really listen. I'd also say that self-care is really important. Sometimes as leaders, we forget that we have to take care of ourselves in order to be effective. And because you see a lot of leaders get burnt out, and it's because they're not taking care of themselves, like not getting enough sleep, not working. I mean, I'll work 12, 13, 14 hours a day, sometimes 16 hours, and I'm not taking care of myself. I start putting my own interest, my own self-care interest, at the bottom of the priority list. And you can't be an effective leader if you're not taking care of yourself. You really have to, pay attention to your own needs as well.
Effective leadership starts with self-care.
And like to be a good leader, you have to have good self-esteem, and that stems from good self-care, right? I mean, if I'm not sleeping very well and not eating right and staying out too late, obviously I'm going to have a cloudy mind, and I'm not going to make the best decisions. So yeah, you really do have to practice good self-care and to be able to listen.
All right, this is the additional questions part of our interview. Question 1 comes from Ryan. Ryan's here with us. If you could go back and give advice to a 20-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give?
Honestly, I probably would never have drank. I mean, I'm just being honest. I mean, I would tell young people that I probably would never have drank. I mean, that's one of the things, and you see it in corporate culture. A lot of late nights, and that's part of a social culture of, socializing, I would tell young people, you might want to reconsider those choices, because if you're the kind of person who likes to stay out late at night and just have a good time, which a lot of young people are, it could evolve into a lifestyle. And yeah, I would have gave myself different advice. I would have spent more time with my elders as opposed to spending more time with my friends. Because there's a lot of people who are gone now, you know, that when I look back, I wish I would have spent time with them. But I never cared about that when I was 20 years old. I just cared about having a good time. I would tell young people to spend time, with older people. It really makes a difference.
Number 2, do you feel that being First Nations or a woman has affected how you lead?
I think that yes, because both positions are, being First Nations and being a woman, I've had to really prove myself as a woman, because for one, in our culture right now, it's based on men. If I was a man and done the things that I've done as a leader, they would make a monument for me. But because I'm a woman, I know for a fact that that's why I'm not getting those accolades, because there's a lot of men who still, and another thing is they won't give me that title Grand Chief. And you can bet if I was a man, I would be Grand Chief right now, because of all of the things that we've achieved. But I know that there's stereotypes there. I also know that in the corporate world, the respect for women is still not quite there. I do a lot of work in the mining industry because there's a lot of mining in our territory. I'm on this one board. I'm on this mining board. I'm the first Aboriginal woman to be on there in 50 years. That's how long their board's been in place. So I'm on another board where it's for legal services. I'm the only Aboriginal person on there. So, I think things have changed, but they haven't changed that much.
So it's still male-dominated, and there's still stereotypes that hinder First Nations involvement.
Well, when you get to the top of that, when you get to the top of all of these chains, it's usually dominated by white males. If you go to any place where there's, where the wealth is in the world, that's what you're going to find. That's how it is.
All right.
Go to the shareholders conference and see what happens.
Question 3: Do you feel personally that the glass ceiling for women has gotten better over time, and what could we do to help women get to upper management? Pat Conacher, one of our teammates who isn't here.
I think the glass ceiling has improved. I wouldn't be where I'm at, and I wouldn't be able to hold this position this many years. I actually come to think of it, me and the other woman chief in our nation, that's the longest the leadership has been held by a woman. So you'd have to say, over 100 years. That's pretty good. But also in industry, yeah, it's improving. It's definitely improving. But I think where it changes is again, it's personal, right? When you're a man moving forward, you can't automatically assume. A lot of times, if you're attractive, a lot of men will automatically assume that you don't know what you're talking about. I think that, and that's like just predisposition coming forward with those attitudes that, oh, here's an attractive woman. Let's not assume that she's smart.
Hey, Ryan, do you want to ask question 4? Oh, sorry, Anita.
But then they do the same thing with women. Like, if they feel like they're older and, you know, a lot of times just assuming they're hard and you're not going to get your point across. I mean, there's always these, it's a lot of times it's still based on looks. And I say that because I got on that mining board and I thought that it's paused. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
there we go. I got on that mining board and, you know, the 8,000 people had to vote for me to be on that board. And I thought I got on there because I have a law degree, a social work degree. I've been a leader all these years, doing all this cutting edge work on Aboriginal engagement in the mining industry. Like I thought I got there because of my accolades and experience. Well, so I go to my first board meeting. There's 50 of us on the board. This is like a national board all across Canada. And the first thing I hear was, "There's that smile that I voted for." I'm like, oh. So I think that's what I have to let you know is like moving forward. It's like, please don't just assume that because a woman is attractive or if you think she's not attractive, that that's where their knowledge is coming from or the position that they're taking or we're taking.
All right, question 5 is by me. What aspect, good or bad, of leadership was unforeseen by you until you experienced the role? So before you became a leader, and now that you've been an experienced leader, looking back, what's some things that you realized that were good about it and unforeseen that were bad?
I probably never thought I was going to be as arrogant as I was. And I say that because I had 2 elections where I won by a landslide. And then the third election came up, and I just assumed that the people wanted to vote me in. And I was really arrogant about it. And then I won that election by 6 votes. And I have to say that was very humbling. That was like one of the most humbling moments. And it made me realize that, you know, I had to really rethink some of the things that I was doing. You know, what is it that I'm doing that the people are not wanting to support me anymore? And yeah, it was arrogance, one of them. You know, I had to get humble and say, and a lot of this, and then self-care, I turned it around and really, you know, started working with our elders and learning about our culture and things that meant a lot to them, and then it meant a lot to me.
Often associated with leadership positions in politics, the term thick skin, is that a bad part of being a leader in politics?
You do have to have thick skin. If you don't have good self-esteem, then this is not the job for you. If you take things personally all the time, then you need to find another job. But you know, again, you have to deal with things in a healthy way. Like for me, before it would just be so easy just to go out with colleagues or go with anybody and just go to a lounge and be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. But that's not self-esteem either. Like you really have to find a healthy balance to say, you know, am I doing something that's affecting my leadership? Is this personal? You know, and figuring that out, and you really have to have self-esteem to know that. And ego, sometimes it's important, but a lot of times it's not. Because when you become arrogant as a leader, that's when you're saying, I know better than you. So you can't get too thick-skinned to the point where you have false pride.
So listening is important when you're a leader of a First Nations environment.
Yeah, you know, right now, because of the history that our people have gone through, they really are looking for healthy people to be there. Because we've been affected by so many unhealthy things that were beyond our control, they want somebody who's evolved into a healthier person. You know, they want somebody who's walked that path but come out of it. And you know, that's the highest standard as a First Nations person. If you're in leadership, that's what our people are looking for. You know, I'm not going to be stereotypical here. Our people really are looking for people who've been through this path but have, you know, come to a point where they're healthy people.
Ryan or Connie, do you want to ask any questions? Ryan?
I don't really know if I have any more questions, but I just want to say I'm so impressed with everything that I've heard so far, and I've been writing like crazy here because what you've said is just solid gold so far.
Yeah.
I think you've pretty much covered everything, and I just wanted to say I was up at Minerals North, and I walked into the room when you were saying your speech there. And I was just so impressed. And one of the things that really jumped out with me, I've already talked with Calvin about how I was so impressed about the 5-minute warning at the end of the speech, how you were given the 5 minutes. And you said, if it's okay with you, I'm going to take just a few more minutes because all of this development is taking place in our territory. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a few more minutes. But there was one other thing that really stuck with me from that speech, and I think you've touched on it a bit here. You talked about the importance of communication and how people can sense when you're not being genuine with them. And I remember during your speech, one of the things that you talked about, if I remember correctly, was the whole issue of town hall meetings for these companies that are coming in. And I think you made mention of the fact that there are a lot of companies that kind of go through the motions and they say, oh, we're having a meeting, but then they don't really do the work to make sure that people show up. And then they have a town hall meeting and no one shows up. And then they sort of say, look, we did what we were supposed to do. We had a town hall meeting and no one showed up. And you know, when you talk during this interview, you talk about just how important it is to actually do the work and build those one-on-one relationships with people and realize that not everyone communicates the same way. And sometimes you need to just sit down one-on-one with someone and let them say what they want to say rather than trying to do it on your terms. And I just wanted to say that you know, from what I saw in your speech, that tied in really nicely with the answers that you gave to these questions.
Oh, thanks. And it's the ongoing thing that I'm learning, because I'm still learning that, actually. I mean, even now, after being a leader for 6 years, I can't assume that this is what our people want, because a lot of times in leadership, things will change. Like, you have to recognize that there's moving goals, moving targets. They're not the original same goals that came out. And especially if you've achieved new ones, then there's going to be some more new ones that you're not even aware of. So it's really developing those relationships and paying attention. And I think that one thing you have to remember, it's true, people can smell BS.
Very well said. I just want to say how much I appreciate that you took the time to do this, and like Ryan said, I mean, so much of what you talked about really resonated with me, and first with my experience, and then also with the learnings that we've done over this course. So, anytime you decide you want to broaden your leadership to BC politics or federal politics, let me know. You've got my vote.
Thanks. You know what? That's actually my next goal.
Good. Good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your genuine answers, and it's not politically correct. I like the way you were just actually really genuine with it, and like you said, there was no BSing. And taking the time, you took 40 minutes out of your morning and willing to stay longer. But just thank you for showing up for us and just doing an interview, and it was awesome.
Well, I'm honored that you asked me, and now I'm going to Pride. Pride Parade, because that's something I care about.
My auntie's in Vancouver right now. And
Oh, cool.
Going to Pride. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Make sure you get a picture on the crosswalk.
They even, do you know those laughing statues that they have in Stanley, like not Stanley Park, but on the beach down by English Bay?
No,
They're
I
all
haven't seen them.
standing in a circle.
Yeah, yeah.
Laughing statues. Well, they're all wearing like rainbow-colored bathing suits, mesh bathing suits. I thought that was funny.
But again, thank you so much. It's so appreciated that you woke up at 10 to give us an interview.
Well, no, it's lucky you phoned me. Common. We should look into doing this for our meetings. I like this.
Yeah, Teambox, yeah.
Yeah.
I was telling you.
It's way better than the conference call.
Yeah, you get no context on conference calls.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to end the recording now, and thank you. Thank you guys for showing up. Ryan and Connie, we're going to meet after this, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right, take care. Recording will stop.